everybody. It's Matt, the Dice Trucker from the Literary Gamers, the face you've seen way too often recently since I've just basically taken over the channel. Jen does join me from time to time concerning things of like the January roundup, which, once again, sorry, we're still trying to figure out this live streaming thing. I think I've got it handled a little better. Not the best, but I've got it handled a little bit better. And once again, I need to tell myself that I've got to look towards that end, because that's what the camera is. I thought I'd come to you today to talk a bit more about something that I had done, or I continue to do, and that's just talking about writing and creative process for me. For those of you who don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, I uploaded a video about the series of books I wrote, starting with a book called Rise of the Black Phoenix. These books were very long, and I'm talking that they were anywhere between 400 to 500,000 words long, which can, if you were to actually put it in a standard size trade paperback, would be well over 1,000 pages. And there were 5 of these books. And so I decided that the main feedback I was getting was I can't hold it up at night when I'm trying to read before I go to bed. So I decided to cut them down and kind of find stopping points in between all of them. And what I've got now is the first book in the series called On the Edge of Divinity. This is the hardcover version of the first book in my series. The book has also been edited for content. There was some adult content in the earlier editions, and it was suggested to me that I either tone that down or get rid of it completely because it was doing the story. So that was taken into account, and I was able to release this. This is, like I said, this is the first book in the series. The way I'm breaking it down now, there will be 16 in the series. At first I was like, that might be a bit much, but there are plenty of fantasy books that have tons and tons and tons of works. Some of you have been maybe wondering, why did I write such a thing? Well, I was going through a very dark time in my life, and it was suggested to me that I journal. The problem is, due to some of my own personal issues, I have a very hard time writing about myself. So when I journaled, I was writing stories. I wasn't writing about me. And those stories eventually all became the basis of this book here. What I thought I'd do for you tonight is read you the prologue, and that way you can tell whether or not it's something you'd be interested in reading. I'll put the... oh, goodness, I just lost my train of thought. No, I'll put the links to where you can find the book online, or you can just simply comment that you'd like a copy and where I can reach you easily so we can find a way to get... On the Edge of Divinity is from a series that I call Call of the Architect. This is the first one, and we have an opening quote, and it's a long one because it was found. I kind of just, this is a fantasy world set in another world. This isn't something like a Dresden Files where it takes place in like Chicago. No, this is just another fantasy world. It is your very basic fantasy because it was the first time I had written something fantasy, and I just wanted to see if it was something I could do. So if you're listening there going, oh my goodness, it just sounds derivative. Well, it was the first shot. I'm happy with the product that came out of it. But if you think it's derivative, I'm working on something now that is a bit more drastic and changed than the initial idea. All right, so I'm going to be flashing maps that I've drawn throughout my my time writing this series on the screen, and enjoy. So just take a moment, and you don't have to watch. You can just listen. And like I said, if you are interested, please let me know, and I can find you the right information to get you into the series. All right, open quote. Peace can be achieved by small voices. Peace can be achieved by the voices from within the company of the oppressor. And peace can be achieved by the voices of the downtrodden. And yet, there can never be peace until the oppressor admits fault. There can never be peace until the oppressor can listen. There can never be peace until the oppressor agrees to reformation. And yet, the oppressor will tear at the throats of those small voices. The oppressor will eliminate the voices within their company. The oppressor will reveal the voices of the downtrodden in the name of condemnation and silence. And yet, peace will be condemned, since fault will never be admitted. Peace will be condemned, since the powerful will not listen. Peace will be condemned at the resistance to reformation. But through it all, voices of reason will brighten the dark. Voices of passion will lead the columns. Voices of kindness will uplift the cause. Voices of justice will solidify the foundation. And voices of love will build the new world. From the book Practices and Propers from the Order of the Architect's Handbook, written by Launius Rice. End quote. Preface. 1500 years after the completion of Call of the Architect. The history of the lands of the Meridian have been generally peaceful and prosperous, leaving many to wonder if there were dark times in our history. I can assume most of you are thinking what the point is about writing a book about a peaceful country, for storytelling lies in the very essence of conflict. But bear with me as we traverse the footsteps of those who once crossed with us. As an upstanding member of society, I felt it necessary to research what I could about the history of our realm. I traveled far and wide, from the palace of Wallingford to the monastery of Midleton. I found little bits of information regarding a long period of history lasting close to 1,000 years. The details, however, were vague and veiled by certain people who responded that it was not for the unlearned eyes. But the more I was turned away, the more curious I was to discover a millennium of darkness. The Meridian was always known to be peaceful, and a slate of perfection in the eyes of the architect. But what was it, for one of those 10,000 years, that caused the world to be plunged into misery? Coming from the capital, I returned home to Jalora, finding nothing. Every question I asked, all the books I read, refused to give me any information regarding this millennium of darkness, to which I now called it, or even to those involved. It seemed as if the Meridian wanted to forget those years. It soon dawned on me that I was going about this all in the wrong direction. I was looking for blatant answers to the gap in the timeline instead of finding other works that referenced the period, but all I got were small details and dates with little history. That was until I ran into a strange, hooded figure who, not once, gave me his name. When he approached me, he gave me a small scrap of paper with beautiful markings around the edge, and told me how important it was that the Meridian learned the strife within the millennium of darkness, and then vanished. The paper instructed me to go someplace I had already been, but for some reason I believed this man, and the location I was to be sent was in Odenshire. And I went off, leaving Jalora once again, to the northern road. Odenshire was much easier to get to than Wallingford or Midleton. Legend says that both Jalora and Odenshire had a connection, and that the cities were so crucial to one another that they had to be connected. And so the northern road was constructed, and was the major highway which spurned off the other roads. This lent itself to a great deal of traffic, of people visiting the capital of Jalora or going to see the grandeur of Odenshire and the Forest of Divinity. But I digress. Upon reaching the city of Odenshire, I looked down at the paper and found an address to a particular tavern located just outside of the palace. When I arrived, it was lacking the feeling of a tavern and had more of a brothel state of mind. Pushing my way through escorts and whores, I found the master of the house, who was eagerly taking the wages and earnings of all those who fancied pleasure over finance. Of course, I hated the idea of spending the night with one of these ladies who had been passed around from person to person, but I was not here for such a thing. I was here for information. When I showed him the piece of paper, the master gave me a quick scowl and turned his back. I admit I was angry and almost made a move to strike the gentleman, But the lady of the house quickly came around and introduced herself. She refused to be called his wife, because she genuinely did not love the master, and she also refused to be called the mistress of the house because she did not enjoy his personal company. So, in the end, she called herself the lady of the house, which admittedly had a nice ring to it. She brought me over to a table, and the master begrudgingly brought over a flagon of ale for both myself and the spouse. She took the piece of paper which had been given to me and studied the markings around the edge. She told me they were the mark of the eagle. The eagle, I thought. No one had ever heard of the eagle for years, and its only existence was at the beginning of the world when the Alphas and Omegas ruled the Meridian. They were prominent figures in history, which aided the Meridian as voices of the architect until the years of which I am studying. This woman was telling me that, for some reason, a follower of the eagle had given me this piece of paper to help me search for something. I asked her if there were any followers of the eagle in town, but she replied there were not. One of the benefits of running a brothel, she told me, was that she knew anyone and everyone who came through Odenshire, even if they weren't interested in the services which the house provided. More interesting was that just outside of the city, she told me, was an abandoned monastery which remained in ruins for some unknown reason, and that if I genuinely needed answers, I should go there. So I made my leave, gave the master a few pieces of coin for the ale, and thanked the lady of the house for her time and information. Taking the paper in hand again, I looked at the polished edge, trying to see if the symbolism which appeared on the outline appeared anywhere else in town. Sad to say, I saw nothing except the allegiances to the current monarch who... But I digress again. I pushed on, knowing that something for this information might be in one of the monasteries which did not survive throughout all these years. Yet upon reaching the outskirts of the city and avoiding the Forest of Divinity, as not to get scorched by its golden leaves, I arrived a day later at the abandoned monastery of Odenshire. While people were visiting the forest, I found this place utterly devoid of any human contact. I brushed aside some of the nature which was taking over the building and pushed the doors open. The symbols on the door were that of an eagle, just like the ones on the paper, and I noticed them more and more as I walked through the empty hallways of what looked like a great place of study. Other monasteries within the Meridian all prayed to the architect, but this one seemed to be wholly devoted to the Alpha and Omega of the eagle. It was strange. It wandered the halls with its stone, appearing to lose some of its luster, and eventually found the library, which left me in a state of awe. Every answer had to be in here, everything that I was looking for. Going through books upon books and scrolls upon scrolls, I found nothing. Nothing was there which answered my interests, and it was yet another voyage wasted. But there had to be a reason. There had to be something behind all of this, which would force a stranger to come to me and send me to a brothel which brought me here. So I raced to the back of the library and noticed that the room seemed endless until I finally reached a wall. There was a stone door with a series of locks on it, almost rusting off. I pushed the door open, and the hinge creaked gently from my force, and the door gave way. Inside were scrolls and papers strewn about, out of order, and thrown callously this way and that. When I read one of the pages, the people were unknown to me. At the bottom of the page, I found the date. Lo and behold, it was of the Millennium of Darkness. I went back into Odenshire and gathered supplies of food, water, and writing materials. I didn't have enough space in my pack to bring home all of these papers, but I could buy enough food for myself to read and rewrite all of these scrolls for the public. With my actions, the gap in history has been filled. The Meridian can now see that there was once darkness and terror within its borders. As I translated these events and placed them in order, since some of them were in a more archaic form of our communication, a thought dawned on me. This chamber of history was sealed and left alone for thousands of years. It was only in the last 100 years that the monastery of Odenshire had been abandoned, yet they remained silent in this part of history. The world worked against them. In their attempts to hide a significant portion of their history, the Meridian forced my hand to bring you all the missing parts of our story. And while it is true that a gruesome and terrifying tale of the human spirit is told here, you can never erase it. These books are my gift to the Meridian. In my excitement, I give you this first work, which may not be the first work of the millennium, but is the first work that I was able to compile. In the days to come, the story will fulfill the timeline of the full years of our missing history. This is the call of the architect. So if that's something you'd be interested in reading, please let me know in the comments below. I was very happy to bring this to you today. If you don't like it, I'm very sorry. I'm sure you've shut the video off by now. I don't have the most pleasing voice when it comes to stuff like this, but I would be very happy if you were interested. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so now. And it helps us with outreach. It helps us do more videos like this one. It helps us with giving you just more stuff to watch throughout the day, along with my solo playthroughs of games and my book reviews that are going to be coming out weekly on Mondays. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. That is the preface, not the prologue, the preface of On the Edge of Divinity. This is the first volume in The Call of the Architect. And keep in mind that preface, once again, 1,500 years after the completion of this series. Thank you all for joining me. See you next time, everybody. Bye.